Hello, and thanks for joining me. You know, it's been a couple of months since I've done an opera chat, and the reason for that is because I haven't seen any operas. I did, however, get a chance to see A Midsummer Night's Dream by Benjamin Britten last weekend, so I thought I'd do a quick chat about it while it's still sort of fresh in my mind. Benjamin Britten, A Midsummer Night's Dream. I saw this performed by Virginia Opera on Saturday, February 17th. Here is my ticket. There's my ticket. And just the cover here, Midsummer Night's Dream. This is based on the Shakespeare play, you know, A Midsummer Night's Dream. And the libretto's done by Benjamin Britten, the composer, along with his longtime partner, Peter Pears. So this opera had its debut in 1960, June of 1960, at the Aldeburgh Festival, Aldeburgh Opera Festival. I guess it's Opera Music Festival, I guess, in Great Britain. And so this is a 20th century opera. It has been a longtime favorite of mine to listen to recordings of, but I had never seen it performed live or performed at all, even a recording performance of it. So I had just heard recordings, so I was really curious to see it actually performed, because opera is not just, you know, the music and the music. It's also in a performance. It's a play. I was really curious to see it, and I had been on, when I saw that Virginia Opera was doing A Midsummer Night's Dream this season, I, you know, enthusiastically bought a ticket for it well in advance, because I knew that this one I did not want to miss, and I was not disappointed. Here is our cast. I'm not going to read through the entire cast, but the conductor was Adam Turner, and the director is Michael Schell, and then there's the principal singers there below. If you're interested to read more about them, you can pause this video and take a closer look at them if you want to. But yeah, so the storyline in this, there's actually 3 different stories. It's basically like the play, you know, the Shakespearean play. The libretto is in the Shakespearean English, so even though this opera is in English, because it's a British opera from the 20th century, since it's using Shakespearean language as well as operatic singing, operatically singing Shakespearean language, I was really glad that we had the subtitles, you know, projected, so I could understand what they were actually saying. But yeah, done in English, but nevertheless, still the subtitles did come in handy. Our main characters, though, the story is basically like the Shakespearean play. You know, we have Oberon and Titania, the king and queen of fairies. They're in a feud over an Indian prince, that little child that Titania has stolen from an Indian king, and Oberon wants the child for himself, and she refuses to give it to him, so they're in a feud, which has upset the balance of nature. And then we have a set of lovers, Lysander and Hermia, who are in love with each other, but Hermia has been told she has to marry Demetrius, whom she does not love. The Duke of Athens, Duke Theseus, has decreed that she has to marry Demetrius, so she and Lysander have run off into a nearby forest. Well, Demetrius is loved passionately by Helena. So Helena she tells Demetrius, basically, you know, you're wasting your time with Hermia. First of all, she loves Lysander, and so she's never going to love you. But he says, you know what, leave me alone, stop following me around. It's never going to work with me. I don't love you. So he pursues Hermia and Lysander into this forest, and then Helena, you know, pursues him. So Oberon, the third group of people we have are actually a group of like rustic peasants. They're tradesmen, really, and there's a little group of them. They want to perform a play for the Duke of Theseus, who's about to marry Queen Hippolyta, who is the queen of the Amazons, who he has recently defeated. And so in honor of that wedding, they want to perform this play. So they're in this forest near Athens to rehearse the play, Pyramus and Thisbe. And so they're really a comic sort of parody of amateur actors. You know, one of the actors, Bottom, thinks that he can do all of the roles. One of them's the one who the flute who actually plays Thisbe, is not only reads his lines but reads the stage directions. And then another one of them who's going to play the lion is all nervous about his lines, and then they tell him, well, all you got to do is roar, you don't really have any lines. But anyway, that's kind of a funny kind of parody of amateur actors. And then later we also have a parody of 19th century opera, which I'll talk about more here in a bit. But what ends up happening to Lysander and Hermia? So Oberon is, in the woods, and he overhears Helena and Demetrius talking, and Demetrius telling Helena, I'm not going to ever love you, so leave me alone. Oberon decides to intervene and get the nectar of a particular flower, and if it's dripped on your eyes, you fall in love with whoever you see next. And so Oberon tells, Puck, who is sort of a magical being, sort of, I guess, Oberon's, right-hand man, to go get this flower and to make sure that, Demetrius, put it in Demetrius's eyes so that when he sees Helena, then he will love her. So Puck sets out to do this, and but he comes across, he says, how am I going to know who this Demetrius is? And so Oberon tells him, it's going to be the one wearing Athenian clothes. So Puck does this, but when he actually comes upon Lysander and Hermia. And so Lysander and Hermia, he puts the flower nectar on Lysander's eyes, and who Lysander winds up seeing the next when he wakes up is actually Helena. And so there's a mix-up there. So he's in love now with Helena. Well, Helena thinks that he's making fun of her because she doesn't believe that he's in love with her because she knew he was all passionately in love with Hermia. Well, this storyline, proceeds on. So Oberon then wants to fix that by telling Puck, no, you got the wrong Athenian, put it in Demetrius's eyes, which he does. And so we have Demetrius and Lysander in love with Helena. Helena thinks they're all making fun of her, including Hermia, and so she doesn't believe them. And then she and Hermia get into a big squabble. And so there's that little confusion going on. But in the meantime, Oberon has also instructed Puck to put this nectar in Titania's eyes so that she falls in love with whatever she sees. Well, then Puck actually comes across the troupe of actors doing their rehearsals, and he decides to turn Bottom, the actor who's playing Pyramus, into half man and half donkey. And so he does that, and so the other actors are all kind of freaked out by that. But then Titania, he also puts has put the nectar in Titania's eyes. When she awakens, the first thing she sees is actually Bottom, so she's hopelessly in love with this donkey man. Bottom. So it's all sort of a mix-up in identities and things like this. The fairies all are determined to set everything right and stop the feud between Titania and Oberon so that nature will go back to being normal. And ultimately, they do, and the spells are broken, and then they all kind of are left scratching their heads about what happened, because, love is a pretty confusing thing, right? And it leaves you in the day, if you've ever fallen madly in love. I love this, on the cover here, you can see it says, love that is not madness is not love. And that's a common human thing right there. Love that is not madness is not love. And I think that's why the Shakespeare plays resonate so well, even after the centuries that have passed, that it's been performed for centuries, because it's just such a resonant theme, I guess, with humans. But then at the end of the opera, sort of like at the end of the play, the amateur actors do perform Pyramus and Thisbe for Duke Theseus. It's very funny. This opera, though, interestingly, in the program notes here, talks about the different themes. And I did notice this also during the opera, which is of course sung, but the role of Bottom's part in the play, whenever they're doing the play Pyramus and Thisbe, when he's Pyramus, that music is sort of a parody of Verdi. And then the Thisbe music is sort of a parody of Donizetti. And so, I think that was Britten's sort of parody of the 19th century, opera, and sort of making a bit of a reference to it there in sort of a humorous way of being like overly emotive and overly grandiose. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And the program notes are written by Glenn Winter, who does a blog, which I'll put a link to, called, I think it's called Dr. Opera. Very good blog, and so for Virginia Opera, whenever he always does several posts about the opera, gives a lot of background about the various operas, and his site is just a wealth of operatic information. So so that's kind of the basis of the synopsis of the opera itself. Hope I didn't go on too long with that. Just some thoughts about it. The production that I saw had a really cool beginning that really set this scene of magic to me. I really got drawn into this magical world of A Midsummer Night's Dream. What they did was at the very beginning, when the audience is still getting assembled or whatever, they had this guy on the stage who was sweeping up, and the stage looked like a backstage. The curtain was behind this. So it was like we were seeing backstage. And so he was kind of cleaning up, and it looked like, a production, some sort of show had just ended. There were various actors that kind of came on and were doing things in costume still and stuff. And these ended up being the actors, the singers for the opera. But after they all leave and we're getting ready to actually start the opera, he finds a book that had been tossed aside, and it's A Midsummer Night's Dream, and he takes it up and starts reading it, reads from it a little bit, and then goes into this kind of closet thing, and it feels like he's dreaming the play, and so when the opera's over, it sort of rehashes that as we were all in a dream, and this person who was doing the sweeping at the beginning of the opera turned out to be Puck. It was the same actor, Puck. And that actor really just kind of stole the show. The character of Puck does not sing. He actually speaks a few lines, but mostly he tells his part through acrobatics and through movement. And so that part was just really was a showstopper to me. Really interesting the way that he was able to tell, his story through movement. He did speak a little bit, but not very much. So I thought that was real interesting and very cool, and it was one of my favorite parts of the opera. So I'm running out of time. I think I will stop with that. I did see there was an insert here in my program that the Mason Opera, which is the George Mason University Opera, will be doing Benjamin Britten's Albert Herring in April, and tickets are only $20, so you can't beat that. I'm going to try to make this opera, Albert Herring, for $20. Should be fun. Another Benjamin Britten opera. This was the first Benjamin Britten opera that I had ever seen performed live, so I hope to see many more. I have listened to quite a few of his recordings, like Peter Grimes and some of his other more famous operas, but I loved it. So glad I got to finally see a live production of A Midsummer Night's Dream opera, and looking forward to my next opera, which is coming up in March. I think it's Don Carlo. I think is my next opera. So until then, stay tuned. Take care. Bye.